The years, the use of cell phones in schools has become a matter of debate. Discussions about whether or not to ban phones in schools are resurfacing yet again following a brutal incident that was captured on video and went viral on social media earlier this week. In the clip, the suspect can be seen repeatedly slapping Lufuno. The victim was later found dead by her mother after she died by suicide, we are told. The 15-year-old suspect has been charged with assault. Let's talk more on this. I'm joined by SADTU's Xolani Fakude and Naptosa's Basil Manuel. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Before we talk about specifically the issue of cell phone usage by pupils in schools, I suppose, Basil, let me start with you and just ask you your take on the latest incident of bullying. I mean, we've been here many a times before, and we find ourselves in this situation. In fact, as I speak to you now, there's another incident being highlighted in the area of Nkomazi in Mpumalanga, which is utterly shocking display of violence between pupils. What are the root causes from your union's understanding?
Thulasizwe, good afternoon, and to Xolani as well. Thanks for the invite, and let me add my voice and pass our condolences to Lufuno's family. Thulasizwe, this is not an easy matter. Bullying has been with us since time immemorial, and it continues all the time. However, it is when we let our guard down when this gets out of hand. There will always be children who are stronger than others, who think they should perpetrate violence on others. But if we as the teachers, we as the schools, we as the custodians don't do more to protect, we then inadvertently encourage it from happening. And I will tell you this, that you will trace in every school where there have been bad incidents that certain things were allowed and not dealt with when they should have been dealt with. And it is not only about the school, it's about the parents and the community, because communities are quiet about this when there are fights outside. And this is why it perpetuates. But I'm saying to you, it's a thing that every school has to work at every single day. Every teacher deals with it. And today we are talking about a little girl who lost her life. Tomorrow it's going to be about somebody with different sexual orientation. And so it goes on. Yeah. So it is a perpetual problem.
Xolani, it's a perpetual problem, as Basil Manuel says there. But from your union's understanding, where would we even begin to try and, I don't know, inoculate schools from the violence that is so pandemic in our society?
Thank you once again, Thulas. Let me greet you, let me greet the viewers, let me greet my colleague, Basil as well. We also want to start by passing our condolences, Thulas, to the family of Lufuno and the community that has been affected. What rather bothers us as a union, Thulas, is that we as a society, we almost only get to talk about it and rather highlight some of these issues that we get to deal with on a daily basis at a school level, only when such incidences, such shocking and drastic incidences actually happen. You must know, Thulas, and Basil is also correct, that indeed it takes the involvement of a society. The school, as we always say, is a microcosm of the society. So what happens in the school is exactly a mirror image of what transpires at the level of the family units, of what transpires at the level of the community as well. So what we are calling for daily is increased parental involvement. We are saying that parents must really take interest in the safety, in the mental health as well, and the progress and the education of their children. And that is how they should assist the system. But also, what we are calling for is that there must be psychosocial services that we've always spoken about, which means that there must be a way in which the education workers at the school level can also be assisted at this particular level. That is also how we can only have these early warning systems that can also assist us to pick up some of those challenges. And that can only be corrected only if we emphasize around the issue of psychosocial services. Again, to us, we also need to look into the issue of the curriculum itself, the nature of the curriculum. To what extent does it really address the kind of ethics and values that we want to reflect as South Africans and as a society? That is why, as SADTU told us, we are also calling for communities and South Africans behind our I Am a School Fan campaign, which is all about mobilizing all stakeholders towards the education of our children.
So, is it your experience, Xolani, if I stick with you for a moment, that schools that tend to have bullying being prevalent, and this is not to say it doesn't happen to varying degrees in most schools, but where it is prevalent with the results that you see, incidents such as the ones we saw at Mbirwi school in Thohoyandou, but also some of the incidents that an MEC like Panyaza Lesufi responds to from time to time in Gauteng. Do those schools generally have a discipline problem? And do you find that perhaps in some of them, corporal punishment is a feature? Because, you know, I've seen reporting elsewhere that seems to suggest that there's that element as well.
Well, we are approaching it correctly, Thulas, because it is indeed a two-way street. You are correct. As we always say, violence can only produce more violence. That is why we will always be very emphatic as a union that we will always discourage our members from resorting to an illegal criminality, in fact, and interventions such as corporal punishment. We do not agree with that. Now, as to whether is it a matter of a discipline narrowly, I would say, Thulas, that it is multi-pronged. Whilst it might be an issue of discipline, but some of the issues are quite deeper. They are also related to the kind of anxieties that learners face. They are also related to the kind of the family structures, the functionality of the family structures that the learners are exposed to, that then gets expressed in the kind of a school. So what I would say to us in brief is that it is multi-pronged. It certainly cannot be pinned down to one variable per se, but that is multi-pronged. That is how we must look at it. And that is why the key interventions, it's all about a multi-stakeholder approach to make sure that we mitigate against it.
Basil, let's bring in the issue around cell phones then. The story of Rufuno Mabunga has some similarities to a situation that we were dealing with. I think the year was 2019, where in Campton Park, I think it was, where the pupil who had been on the receiving end of this bullying and assault were told that, you know, later almost engaged in an act of harming herself after that particular incident. And it's difficult to talk about issues of suicide sensitively, given, you know, the sensitivities around mental health, particularly this particular issue. These cell phones in schools, are they a help in that they give us a glimpse into, you know, the situation, or do they serve to then escalate and sort of add salt to the wound of the victim of bullying in instances when bullying is occurring?
Thulasizwe, it's a bit of both. But the one thing we've got to remember is that we can't turn the clock back on technology. And you can't talk about banning cell phones. All you do is then you create a management logistical problem in a school of trying to keep these out. It doesn't work. What we've got to do is we've got to manage what happens at the school. But of course, if we look at the positives, if we didn't have the cell phones, so many things would go unreported, good and bad and ugly. And of course, it gives us a glimpse into the realities that are there. Unfortunately, with every one of these videos, there's always somebody that will suffer greater embarrassment. So you can never just have a blanket approach to yes, it's a good thing or yes, it's a bad thing. It has done good things. It has also resulted in bad. But I don't think we must overreact, because cell phones themselves have a place in the world, and everybody, if you don't have one, you want one, and everybody's walking around with one. So it would be foolhardy to take an approach which suggests that you can summarily do away with them. You can't. It won't happen, not ever, not in this country or any other country. What we've got to do is find better ways to manage it. And of course, maybe it is about education as well, and protecting people, because even our learners need to know that when they take that video and when they publish that video, somebody's dignity is going to be injured.
Absolutely.
By it.
Yeah. And Xolani, what's your take on this particular aspect? Basil says it would be foolhardy to say you can do away with cell phones in school. It's like trying to turn back the clock. We simply cannot do that. Do you share that sentiment?
Absolutely, we do. Thulas, Basil is correct. In fact, right now we are even talking of the concept of blended learning, which means that cell phone as a reality, as a new reality that we need to deal with, not just cell phones, but other means of communication, digital communication, are a reality that we just need to live with. Basil is correct, but it's all about really how we manage what our children, our learners, become exposed to. It is about what we use those very platforms, by the way, to profile positive messaging around respecting the dignity of fellow learners. I mean, even ourselves, by the way, as educators do sometimes get bullied by our own learners. You would have seen various of those videos making the round in the recent years. So it is a reality, and really it would be a bit narrow. It would be a bit of a cosmetic approach to say that we then ban cell phones within the schooling environment, because like we said, it is about managing, and it is about managing the content, and it is about using those very gadgets to positively profile what we want to see as a country.
All right, Basil, let me give you the last word then. In the interim, while we talk about the conceptual issues of how we need to get more involved as parents and communities in the schooling environment, conscientize the pupils about issues of human rights and dignity, use of cell phones, etc., are there any policy interventions that can be done now that can actually, at the point of intervening to at least curb the conduct while we try and deal with the root causes?
Thulasizwe, it's not about policies. I think there are adequate policies. I think it's about action. And our teachers know, and many of them are doing a fantastic job in the most difficult situations where they are managing this. But everybody has to run as a team. Schools know what to do. We can create the most beautiful policies, but if the people aren't implementing them, they are valueless. And that is the bottom line.
Xolani, if you can give it a quick take.
Well, I can certainly say that it is all about the community toolers. I once again want to repeat that we are mobilizing the entire country behind our I Am a School Fan campaign. All stakeholders, let us get involved. That is how we can mitigate against this.
And so on it goes. That conversation continues, that actually parents getting more involved in the life of the schools of their children would go a long way towards dealing with some of these issues that we deal with from time to time. Xolani, Fakude and Naptosa's Basil, Manuel, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation that we've been having about the situation of bullying in school as well as the role of technology. One wonders if there could be a way to channel some of the cell phone footage, for example, to assist pupils to be able to report incidents such that it's not just gratuitous in that it ends up on social media, but actually there are channels through which you can highlight a situation in school. I don't know, just thinking out loud here.